Hello and welcome to an easy miniature do-it-yourself vintage camping bag with a cooler, thermos, and bug netting for miniature displays. Materials and supplies are shown throughout the video and listed below in the description box. Fabric is used for the base of the bag, and here are some zipper ideas and some ideas for the bag strap. First, I like to make a pattern. You could make your pattern so it cuts on the fold, like I'm showing here, in different sizes. Or you could go ahead and make it into the full size. So for the 1/12 scale, I'm using an 8 by 4 piece, which cuts on the fold. Or you could cut a square piece or by 8 by 8, which I show here. The inside fabric piece is 7 3/4 by 7 3/4 inches. Next, select the fabric. I am using a soft faux suede in light brown and a green plaid. To put the pieces together, I'm going to glue them. You could go ahead and sew them. What I do first, and I'm showing you on my paper pattern, is I'm going to fold a 1/2 inch around all of the edges, on the outside and on the inside. Fold them together, and you can miter or angle cut the corners so they're not so thick. Place a thin bead of glue around the outside of the hem and press it inward. Use it like your fingers to kind of press it flat on both sides of the fabric, the outside and the inside. Once both of the pieces have been glue hemmed, center the two pieces together. So the outside is going to be on the outside with the hem on the inside, and then you're going to have the inside of the hem to the inside piece, if that makes sense. I'm trying to show you here how it's going to look, and you should end up with 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch around the inside perimeter. So here are the fabrics. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip them upside down. If you want to iron your fabric, you can go ahead and iron it at this time. And I'm going to take my little ruler and measure out 1/2 inch all the way around. You can go ahead and mark that for each edge, go around and then glue it. I'm going to fast forward through all this because you'll get what you're doing. So what's easiest for me, if you take the two opposite sides and glue them first and then glue the other two sides, the opposite sides. You can cut the little angles into right angles on each of the corners first, or you can wait till after you've got all the pieces glued together and then lift up the corners and cut that little angle cut out. Once the glue has been applied, then I raise it up, make sure that it's 1/2 inch all the way across, and then I finger press it into place. Here I am cutting the right angles on the corners. And then I add a little extra glue on those corners to make sure they're pressed down. Glue a 1/2 inch hem all the way around the other piece of fabric. You can choose many fabric combinations. These are my version of a 1960s or maybe a 1970s sleeping bag with kind of a canvas outside and a plaid look on the inside. Before I glue the two bag pieces together, I try adding some different textures for padding. First, I try to cover some fabric over cardstock in the shape of 4 pieces that I glued to the outside on the green. And then second, clear to the right green one, I glue felt in between the two fabric pieces with that same design, and I felt like I needed to outline it with a marker. And after I outlined it with the marker, I thought it made it look worse. So I only did it on the front, and I didn't do it on the back, and I just put little dots. I didn't make straight lines. So it goes around where the fabric pieces are, which are in between the two, the front and the back. And I didn't really like it. So I decided when I made the brown canvas, one that I'm showing you, I'm just not going to put any felt or any texture on it, because one of my goals was to make sure that I could roll it up like a sleeping bag, which it's a lot easier to do without any of the padding. And so I roll it up, and the brown one's fine. And then you can see here I'm going to roll up the one. This one just has the felt, the regular craft felt in between it, and it actually rolls out pretty good, and it does look like a sleeping bag. So I probably could have gone with this, and I'm kind of considering, should I go ahead and put that onto to the brown sleeping bag. But I'm going to show you when I try to roll up this one on the left, the one that has the little cardstock pieces covered in fabric, it's very difficult to roll it up. I mean, maybe could I've put fabric over pieces of thin copy paper and then made the design, I don't know, but it's very hard to roll up. So that one didn't work when I wanted to roll it up. In the long run, I decide to just not add any of the felt to the green one. I just glue the two pieces together for the green and the tan. But I did think about it. That's the fun thing about doing projects, trying all kinds of different ideas. Just like deciding on what kind of a faux zipper I could use. I had this silver metallic cord that kind of looks like a zipper to me, and it was kind of thick. I noticed that it was wrapped around a cord, a white cord, so then I tried to pull it out and it still kept its shape. So that's what I glued around this sleeping bag. Then I thought, I'm going to try something else, and I use a metallic silver embroidery floss. So it comes in a strand with 6 little pieces. What I did was I doubled it up, and then I glued it together, the 2 pieces. So I guess it'd be a total of 6 little strands, and then I glue that around on 3 of the sides as shown. To make the faux zipper pulls, I am taking a little silver sticker, cutting it into about a 1/4 inch shape and tapering the corners. Then I use a black permanent marker to make a little dot, and next I glue it on to the edge of the cording or the embroidery floss. So I glue the zipper embroidery floss around sides and the bottom. I trim the sticker, add a black permanent marker dot, glue the top ends, and then place and press the sticker on the glue, kind of on an angle. For a different fabric look, I try adding tan permanent marker to some of the stripes. Do a test piece first. Next I add a headrest pillow. You could use a rectangle shaped one or a roll one like the bolster types that I have made in a previous video. I use a cream cotton fabric to make the rectangular pillow by using a 3 3/8 by 3 1/2 piece. First I glue hem both of the long sides. 1/8 on one of the long sides of 1 inch, I fold over after I glue it and finger press it. Then on the opposite side of the long side, I fold 3/16 of 1 inch, so it's a little bit wider. This is going to be the opening for the pillow. And after I glue that, finger press it, I'm going to fold it over on top of itself again and glue that to create a smoother end opening. And so this is the opening and the end that looks inside, so that's why I was trying to make it a little smoother. But you can make any of these dimensions or measurements the way you want. This is just what I tried and what seems to work for me. So here's where I'm folding it over, finger pressing it. Once I've got that glued together, then, and I have both sides, the smaller 1/8 inch and the 3/16 inch, then I'm going to fold the good sides together, like I'm showing you right now, and I'm going to glue the raw edges there on the top, and then the bottom side, the 1/8 on the inside, I'm going to go ahead and glue that right there on the top. And then I'm going to press them together. I have applied the glue, and now I'm going to carefully fold this over without getting glue on myself, and then match up the edges together, and then finger press those together, the end and the bottom. And of course you could always hand sew, or use your machine to sew the whole pillow together, and the camping bag. I'm going to trim off some of the excess threads here. Let this dry a little bit, the pillow, before you turn it inside out. For the filling of the pillow, or the stuffing, I am using regular craft felt. I cut a 2 inch by 4 inch piece of fabric, and then I start to roll it over, and then I put a glue dot, and then I sew it at the ends. You could use quilt batting or extra material, scrap materials, or beads, or whatever you're used to using instead of craft felt. I roll the fabric from the short side down the length of it into about a 1-inch section. When I come to the end of the piece of the felt, I adjust it to make sure that the seam will be kind of in the middle of the pillow, kind of like that right there where I have the clips. And then I'm going to just tack it down with some regular sewing thread, just to kind of secure it, to see if that's the thickness that I'm going to want for the pillow, or if I need to take out the thread and adjust it to fit into the pillow. You could go through and just sew the whole seam shut if you'd like. And then I sew the other side as well, just sewing them both down. So why do I have a comfy pillow when I'm going camping? Well, for me, what camping meant when I was a kid was a sleeping bag, and you were either on the back porch or just on the backyard, just out underneath the stars. And it was really, really fun. So of course you got to have your comfy pillow along with your sleeping bag. And if it was too cold, or it started to rain, or you heard some strange noises, I could just grab my sleeping bag and pillow and get back into the house. Now I'm ready to turn the pillowcase inside out. I'm going to use my blunt tweezers and kind of grab a corner or pinch a corner and then gently pull it out. Once I have the pillowcase reversed, then I use another blunt instrument, or the other end of the tweezers, and I just try to tuck out those little corners, get as much fabric as I can, and then straighten it out and finger press it and check it to see if it's okay. I've got to clip some little threads there, and it's ready to put the stuffing inside of the pillow. So I'm trying to slide that in there, get it tucked in. I may have it a little bit too thick. I'm gonna give it a try and try to squeeze it around it. That's because I want it kind of fluffy. So I just go around gently pulling it down a little bit at a time. And then I kind of adjust the pillow once I get it tucked all the way in, slide it down. I could glue that end closed shut, but I think I might want to adjust that pillow later, so I'm just going to kind of finger press it in for now. And I give the pillow a little gentle squeeze. I wanted to make a way that I could roll up the sleeping bag and have it secured. So I'm going to use elastic around the outside of the sleeping bag. So I fold the sleeping bag in half lengthwise, and then I begin to roll from the bottom of the sleeping bag. Just roll it gently up, and I'm pulling onto the fabric to try to keep it as flat as I can and tuck it in, just to give me a nice little roll right there. And then kind of tuck the fabric in with my other finger and then bring it to the top. I am using elastic for the strap. I have the brown piece, kind of a ribbon type strap. I believe it was on a box or a gift, and I saved it in my elastic bag. So I take one end and I just kind of go around the outside of the bag, not too tight, to give me a measurement. And then I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch. So what I want to do is make 2 straps, and then I'm going to put a piece in between the two for kind of like a handle. For this sleeping bag, I need 2 4.5-inch pieces. It's 4 1/4 around the sleeping bag, and I added another 1/4 to it because that's going to be the overlap. I'm going to put a dot of glue on that, and then I'm going to make a cross with brown thread to secure it. I do the same for the other 4.5-inch piece, overlapping 1/4, putting a glue dot and trying to make an X shape. Then I take a small 1-inch piece, and I'm going to go right over the overlap piece ends to attach the 2 pieces together. I do a similar process. I'll put a dab of glue onto the elastic, right onto the little X's, put the 1-inch piece on, and then I'm going to sew another X to attach all 3 pieces. You could also use ribbon or string, or even make a little sack to put the sleeping bag in. I have a few little extra camping items that might work in a camping scene, including some purchase items, like this little thermos made from a dowel rod and paper wrapped around it and a little strap, a little cooler that looks like it was made from a film canister, an old-time film canister, and a little piece of canvas or ribbon and 2 pins at the end, and then they painted it. It looks like they cut it down to size a little bit from the top and then made it so the cap would fit on top of it. Then they added some plaid fabric around it and then pinned the strap. I think they used one of the film canisters that look a lot like this piece, and then they cut it from the top down to make it a little bit shorter. I'm not sure where I purchased it or who made it, or else I would tell you, but it reminds me of kind of a Scotch cooler. Another thing that you could use if you didn't have a film container is maybe using one of these effervescent tablet containers. I've used them when I made the beehive and the honey. I made them 5-gallon buckets from that piece by cutting it, so you could maybe use that as well. But I think what I'm going to try is I'm going to try some bottle caps. Got some bottle caps and I have this wood bead, and I'm going to put the bottle caps on either end of it and paint it. And this is about, I don't know, 1.25 inch bead. And I'll put the caps on and see if I can make a little cooler out of that. And of course I have to paint it this campground green color, and I'll add some silver. Another item that I have is this little canvas basket that I acquired. It looks like it's been painted, and then the lid is sewn on. There's some handles, and then the little attachment peg, and then a little backpack. I've made that in a prior video. I'm actually using the same fabric as the sleeping bag. Quite a few years ago, I took a piece of foam board and I covered it to make one side a first aid kit and the other side a radio. I made an antenna that goes up and down. It's actually from a hairbrush, and then a little handle, and then on the side I put a flashlight with a shiny embellishment at the end for the light, or the shiny part. I think I'm going to paint the flashlight. And I've made a thermos a little bit larger than the dowel rod one, a flexible bug net to put over top of your head, and finally a little blanket or a piece of canvas that you can put underneath your sleeping bag for a soft layer to keep the bag clean and dry from the dew. All right, I just remembered I had a little Coleman keychain lantern clear to the left that I really think it's more 1/6 scale, but I actually think it's going to work in this 1/12 scene. To make the bug net, I cut 3 pieces of netting from the pattern shown, 1 in the 4x5 inch and 2 in the semicircles. I glued and then sewed the wrapped floral wire around all 3 edges, and then I attached the sides to the middle of the 5-inch sides and then bent it around. I forgot to hit the record button when I made this. You could probably use a little bit stronger wire if you wanted your bug net to retain its shape, but what I wanted to happen was I wanted to be able to fold the bug netting, and then I could fold it out for storage, and then I would be able to pop it back out when I was needing it. The canvas little rug underneath the sleeping bag also can be rolled up and then put into another one of the straps. To make the thermos, I use a wood craft pre-made piece that's about 1 1/4 inches in length and about 3/8 of an inch in diameter for the base, and then a small cap about 3/8 by 3/8 for the lid, and then part of a large paper clip for the handle. First, I drill little holes for the handle spot after I measure from the cutting. I just kind of hand drill it so that the glue will help hold it in place. And the part of the large paper clip that I'm using, there's 2 little curved ends on one end, and then there's one that has just on the other end, just the one end. I'm using that far end right here. Whoops, dropped that. I'm just using the one curved end right there, and I just cut it. It's about 1/8 of an inch on each of the ends from the curve. So I'm going to use that end, and then that's what I use to measure to make my little holes that I drilled in. Then I paint the cap and the wood silver, and then I add some more of that camping green around the bottom of the thermos, and then I glue the cap to the top and glue the handle to the side for my thermos. To make the mini cooler, I painted the bead the camp green, then I painted the bottle caps that were white, I painted them silver. I took a little piece of that silver cording and I made a handle out of it. I used another part of the large paper clip, the curved end, for a top lid handle and glued that on. But before I did that, paper punched two of the silver metallic textured pieces from, I think it was a coffee seal that I washed from a coffee container, and I put that on the top and glued it on the bottom too. Then I put that handle on the top. And yes, I have to see if I can try to make the smaller scales. I do have dimensions down below in the description box, but I gave it a try. You will have to modify, maybe making smaller prints and for the smaller sizes, like the small little gingham pieces I found. I did find some small plaid. And then instead of making hems, especially for this very small one, all I did was put glue around the edges to stop it from fraying. So I cut it to the exact size instead of adding a hem. And then I added one strand of the embroidery floss around the edges for the zipper, and then glued it together. I fold down from the top a little right angle so that I can add a little pillow. I was able to roll up one of the sleeping bags, and I use regular sewing thread, brown sewing thread, for the straps. And here's a collection of all the different sizes of the little camping bags. Sometime in the future, I'll add some more camping accessories. I hope you like and share this video, and try making a mini camping sleeping bag and pillow and accessories. Thank you so much for watching.